Thanks everyone for joining us today on this fifth session of the Fall 2020 Road to Research Meet the Researcher series. Today we're going to be meeting an undergraduate student researcher who is a current mechanical engineering student here at CMU. If you'd like to advance to the next slide, please. And this student's name is Sharfin Islam. And we're going to learn all about their research, how they grew up, where they're from, and then we'll get to participate in a hands-on activity related to their research. I think you're really going to enjoy it. It's a really neat activity, and it is a little challenging. So going through our agenda points, to start out, we'll do our standard introductions, and then we'll meet Sharfin, learn about Sharfin's research. We'll break out into our activity rooms and then come back for our conclusion. And then we'll have everybody out of here when we said we would by 12:30. So I'll start off by introducing myself. I'm Kristen Lavery. I'm the Assistant Director and Business Manager of the Leonard Gelfand Center. Some random fun facts about me. During college, I was able to study abroad in both France and Italy. And recently I built my first piece of furniture, which I'm very proud of. I have it displayed on the screen for you all. It's a kitchen island. It's got cabinets, legs, and a butcher block countertop. And also it has trim around it. And I didn't use any specific instructions for this, but you can learn how to do just about anything online. So if this is interesting to you, Google it. I'm sure you can figure out how to make something similar as well. Maybe your parents would let you do that. So our next person and member of our coordination team is Dr. Vicki Webster Wood. She's with us today. Vicki is an assistant professor in mechanical engineering. Vicki, if you'd like to say a few things about yourself.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I know many of you have heard from me before, so I'm trying to change up my facts a little bit here. So this year I am growing a succulent garden, which has been a lot of fun. They're really hard to kill, so it's good as an engineer because they're easy to grow. And it turns out that they grow these little pups, which are these smaller plants attached to the main plant. And you can actually pull those off and propagate them to new pots. And so I'm currently propagating two. More in line kind of with this program, after kind of similar events, when I was in middle school, I started participating in science fair, and I competed in the science fair competition in New Mexico every year from 6th to 9th grade. And over the course of that time and into high school, I got really into programming languages. And so I can kind of program in 5 languages, 4 of which I actually earned before I even went to college. So there's a lot of opportunity to get involved with that, even as you're in middle school and high school. Yeah, and I've seen succulents. What are succulents? Cactuses are a type of succulent. Give me 2 seconds and I'll grab one. They're right here. This is my favorite because it's in a snail pot. So that's a succulent. They don't take a lot of water. They're desert plants, easy to grow. And so then I guess let's continue on to the next member of our coordination team. Saul, would you like to introduce yourself and say a few words?
Yeah, hey everybody, I'm Saul. I'm a PhD student in the Biohybrid and Organic Robotics group, which is Vicki's lab. Some of you have seen these facts before, so I'll give you some fresh new ones. One fun fact about me is I have 2 3D printers in my apartment right now. One is my personal 3D printer and one is my lab 3D printer. And so I use it to like print plastic devices and art respectively on the lab printer and my own printer. I also have 3 citizenships. So I'm a citizen of the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom because I was born in the United States and my mom is from England and my dad is from Canada. And a third fact is I have 2 cats. Their names are Bella and Luca. They are adopted and they are 10 years old. And next we are gonna have Allison, who is another person in our lab. Allison, you can take it away from here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Allison. I'm also in the biohybrid and organic robotics group. And just a couple fun facts about me is that this past semester I was part of the CMU Dancer Symposium, where I got to learn different dance styles that I haven't tried before. So that was a lot of fun. And then I studied in high school photography and graphic design, which was a lot of fun. And then a third quick fun fact would be that we recently rescued a beagle, and her name is Daisy. So my family's really excited about that. Okay, let's move on to the next introductions. Okay, so we're going to introduce our mentors right now. So I'm going to call on them each to introduce themselves briefly. So we'll start out with Charlie.
Hi, I'm Charlie. I'm a senior in mechanical engineering, and I work in the microsystems and mechanobiology lab on DNA origami.
Thank you, Charlie. Let's continue with Emma.
Oh, sorry. Hi, everyone. I'm not sure my video is on, but that's fine. My name's Emma. I actually work in the same lab as Charlie, and Charlie helps me out and teaches me a lot of stuff all the time. Oh, there we go. I'm a grad student, third year PhD student, also studying DNA origami and building microsomers.
Awesome. Thank you, Emma. Let's continue with Mark.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Mark. I am a PhD student in electrical and computer engineering. A fun fact about me, I have been playing chess for more than 10 years now.
That's really cool. Thank you for sharing that, Mark. And let's continue with Kathleen.
Hi, I'm Kathleen, and I am a PhD student in mechanical engineering. And I guess my research is basically making sea slug robots.
Thank you for sharing, Kathleen. And then we'll finish up with Terry.
Hi, I'm Terry. I'm a PhD student in the Robotics Institute, and my research is trying to recreate whiskers, like in animals, but for robots.
Awesome. Thank you so much for everybody for introducing themselves, and we're excited for today.
All right, thank you, Allison, and all of our mentors for being here today. So let's get to our main event and our presenter, Sharfin. You want to go ahead and get started? We'd like to get to know you. And we will start with our first poll of the day. And it's asking, what country has this flag? Is it A, Japan, B, Adamia, I hope I said that right, C, Nepal, D, Bangladesh, or E, Lesotho? I hope I said that one right too. So I'll give you all just a few more seconds to respond.
Kristen, it looks like there's a question about the poll in the chat. Is the background color for this flag that green color? Is that what they're supposed to be?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, this entire like green rectangle with the red dot is the flag.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and end the polling. And share our results here. So the majority of our students said D, Bangladesh. Sharfin, I think that's a good introduction for you. Would you care to tell us?
Yeah, so that is correct. That flag is Bangladesh, and it is actually where my family is from. So that is why that was the poll. So Yeah, so I guess I can get started talking about myself, right?
Well, before we get started, what part of the country did you grow up? If your family is from Bangladesh, did you grow up there, or was it just your family that's from there?
Good question. I actually only lived in Bangladesh for 2 years of my life. My family like went back and forth since like the 80s from Bangladesh and the US. I was actually born in Reno, Nevada. The biggest little city in the world is the motto of that town. It's a little depressing now, but it's got character. Yeah, so I actually was born there, and I lived there until I was 7. I lived in Bangladesh for 2 years in between that. And then when I was in 3rd grade, in the middle of 3rd grade, I moved to Philadelphia, a little suburb outside Philadelphia, actually. And that's where I have been for the past 13 years. And on the left there, you can see a picture of like 2-month-old me with my 3 older sisters who are basically my 3 other moms. So.
So what were you interested in middle school?
So yeah, in middle school, I wasn't super into engineering or like really doing well in school. It's kind of interesting. I really just like basketball and like hanging out with my friends and like playing video games. I really didn't like have a desire to like do super well in school or like do research or be an engineer. I kind of just wanted to be a kid during my time in middle school.
Mm-hmm. Did you sort of have something like a direction or a career that you like pictured yourself in at this point?
Yeah, so I actually thought about a lot of things when I was a kid. At one point, I wanted to be a corporate lawyer because I heard they make a lot of money. I also wanted to be in the NBA, and after I scored 2 points in my entire season that year in the middle picture there, I realized that's probably not possible. So I had a bunch of different goals, but like I always liked technology. I just wasn't like necessarily motivated to be an engineer. I'd always like watch like YouTube videos about tech and stuff like that, and I always like building things. So it wasn't really until like 8th grade when I really like set my goal to become an engineer, and that's when I like kind of like put my head down and started to focus on like doing well in school and like actually like doing some activities that would expose me more to engineering.
So what in 8th grade happened that made you sort of turn more fully towards engineering and really put your nose to the grindstone for that?
So yeah, that's an interesting question. In 8th grade, it was a little bit more. There was more like I understood the gravity of like school a lot more because my parents always emphasized like the ability of education to serve as sort of like a tool of mobility. So that was like usually like a big part of my life. And I had 3 older sisters that went through college. So in 8th grade, I started to sort of understand the importance of like education and also like what it can do for you, and also I started to just enjoy technology more and more. So when I started like in 8th grade, I started just watching YouTube videos, honestly, and I saw these like really cool robots on YouTube from Penn, like the University of Pennsylvania, which is 30 minutes away from my house. And these robots are like super cool. So I emailed the professor and I was like, I have an A in Algebra 1. Can I work in your lab? And they actually didn't respond, but it's funny. I ended up working for that professor's company last summer. So small world. But anyways, yeah, I started like getting really into these YouTube videos, and I was like, I want to build these when I'm old. I want to learn how to build these. And to do that, you have to start like putting effort into school and sort of like putting your head down and sort of focusing on your goals. So that's what really motivated me in 8th grade.
That's great. And that makes a lot of sense that you sort of saw this thing that you're really excited about. And you're like, how do I go from where I'm at right now to where I want to be? And you're like, school, working real hard.
Yep.
So did you participate in any camps or sort of summer programs or things like that?
During middle school, yeah. So my parents or my mom and my oldest sister specifically, who is literally my second mom. She's on the picture to your right there. They never let me sit around for a summer and just like do nothing. So like I was always doing something, like whether it was like I don't know if you guys know what Kumon is, but it's like a tutoring program or something like that. Like they would always make me do something. So over the summer, I was always like doing work or like doing extracurricular activities. And that was really motivated by my parents, my sisters. But I started to sort of acknowledge the importance of those events and like the privilege it was to have those opportunities later on as I progressed through like college, or not college, but like high school and 8th grade. So
Very cool. Very cool. What about high school? Were you like involved in any clubs in high school?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that I remember from high school was being part of the robotics team. So I went to a school called Radnor High School, and our team was called Radnor Robotics. So I joined the robotics team my first year, and it was probably like the biggest aspect of my high school experience.
What was the thing that sort of prompted you to join? Was it like, I mean, you mentioned being interested in robotics from YouTube. Was it sort of connected to that?
Yeah. So this is what a lot of people do when they get into high school. They start joining like random clubs and just like seeing what they're interested in. My sisters told me about the robotics club when I was in 8th grade because they went to the same high school. So they told me about it and it seemed really interesting. So I showed up the first day, and it seemed like another club at first when I like read the flyer. But when I showed up the first day, there was like a really big sense of like community and like sort of family when I walked in the room. I could like feel that on my first meeting, and I kind of wanted to be a part of that. So that's really what like drew me in. That's what sort of kept me working. And then as I started to like work on projects and started getting my hands dirty, I really liked just like collaborating with other people, problem solving, debugging, and sort of like using your intuition, mechanical intuition that you develop in like your science classes and math classes and like an application. So
Yeah, I love that mix between, you know, things that you're really interested in and also just being around people who share that common interest. It's like a really cool thing you get from these clubs. When you're in these in robotics, are there any sort of memorable builds or projects that you did that you'd like to share?
yeah, so if you look at the picture on the left there, those are the 2 robots that we actually we won the state tournament with my sophomore year. So my sophomore year, I actually probably put in like the most work of like any of my years. I was in charge of like these freshman robots. So like we had like a varsity team and like a junior varsity team. So I was in charge of like the JV team, and that was like all the freshmen and all the new members. So I took on a big role, like a big leadership role at that point, and it was like a really like transformative experience for me as like an individual, and also like a leader in that sense. So that was probably like my most memorable project or like year of my robotics experience.
That's awesome. So you're doing robotics, you're studying hard in classes because you're like, I want to build robots when I, you know, get out of high school and get out of college. What subjects were sort of difficult for you at this time?
Yeah. So being motivated to do well and doing well are sometimes 2 different things. So like in high school, I actually struggled a lot. I took like all honors classes and I really like put a lot of pressure on myself to do well. So sometimes it was really hard to do well. And I had like a lot of like blunders in high school that I look back at and I honestly think it's really funny now. So like for example, like for my physics exam, like in junior year, like it was an AP physics class and I love physics, but I thought there were 60 seconds in an hour. So I got like a 20% on that exam. And my teacher was like, yeah, you should have known that there's not 60 seconds in an hour. And I was like, oh, well, okay, I guess I'm not getting an A in this class. So I had a lot of moments like that. And I struggled in like a lot of my classes, even like math classes and stuff like that. But just because I didn't do well in like my grades doesn't mean I wasn't learning a lot. Like my high school was really competitive and it was like pretty difficult overall. Honestly, like some of my hardest classes are still from high school. So I still learned a lot and I actually learned how to like think critically in my classes. So now that I look back, I think it's more important that I didn't like necessarily just like get A's in every class, but I learned how to like think and sort of understand the material because that has served me well a lot longer than just like getting an A in a class. So
Yeah, that's absolutely like such a valuable insight that like grades aren't reflective of how much you learned and vice versa, right? It's just because you did poorly or even if you did well in a class, it doesn't really tell you how much you learned. So other than sort of high school classes and robotics, what else were you doing in high school?
Yeah, so in high school, robotics was my main extracurricular, but I tutored at Kumon, which is kind of funny because I hated Kumon when I was there as a student, but I loved it as a tutor. So I just did it as like an after school job, just like make some money. But I learned that I really love teaching, and I really love helping people understand material that like I spent so much time to understand. So like, I was able to like give them like perspectives that I thought about things in different ways, and it was really cool, and it was like one of like the most valuable experiences in my life. Yeah, someone said the student has become the master. That's exactly how I felt. But yeah, I love teaching, and honestly, it's like after I worked at that job, I realized that I wanted like be involved in education in some form for like my career. So like since then, I've like been teaching in some capacity every year. So it's either like being a TA or like working at like a summer camp or like something like that. Just like being involved in education. So
That's fantastic. So you're finishing out high school and you choose college. Where do you go and why?
yeah, so as I said, I struggled a lot in high school. So I applied to a lot of schools. And I was a sort of a weird candidate because I took like really hard classes. My grades were like okay, but anyways, I applied to like a bunch of schools, like probably 20 schools, too many schools. Don't apply to 20 schools, by the way. It's a lot. But yeah, I applied to like 20 schools, and I actually only got into 2 of them. So I got into Pitt, and I also got into Drexel. So Drexel is like a school in Philly, and I actually ended up going to Pitt for my first college. Yeah.
All right. So what was like the reason that you chose like Pitt over Drexel, or like how did you sort of choose Pitt?
Yeah. So Pitt has like Pitt is a really good school. I made it sound a little bit like I had to like settle for Pitt, but Pitt is like a great school, and they have a lot of great engineering research. And they're very reputable and like great school. Yeah, so I started like talking to my sisters. Like my sisters guided me through like all college and like high school and stuff. So I was very fortunate to have them with me because they're also engineers and stuff like that. So I was talking to my sister, and she knew that I wanted to probably go to grad school after college. So Pitt has more research opportunities and stuff I'm interested in. And also Drexel is really big about their co-op program, which is basically just like an internship program that they have. So they emphasize that over like research. So overall, Pitt like fit my interest better. It was also a little cheaper because it was a state school for me. And I also wanted to get into a different environment. So like Drexel was like 8 miles away from my family. So I know my mom would like come to see me probably every other weekend. So I wanted to get out a little bit and sort of like experience a different environment. So that is why I ended up at Pitt.
Nice. And so you're at Pitt, and I see you have the Mechanical Engineering and Material Science Department logo. So is that what you ended up studying?
Yep. So I came in and I actually knew that I wanted to do mechanical engineering since like junior year of college, or not college, sorry, junior year of high school. Yeah, so I knew that I wanted to do mechanical engineering. So I had my like basically just like my mindset on that as a major, even though like as a freshman engineering student, you're undeclared. But I basically like pretty much knew that I wanted to do mechanical engineering.
At this stage, like what did being a mechanical engineer mean to you?
Being a mechanical engineer sort of it meant that I could sort of fulfill the goal I set for myself in 8th grade. Like when I saw those robots, I wanted to work on those robots. And those robots are very complex. So I'll show like a picture of the robots I'm talking about later. But robots involve like a lot of different aspects of engineering. So like it's not just mechanical. But as I went through high school and I did the robotics club, I realized that I was more interested in like the mechanical design of it and like the dynamics over like the programming or like the circuits and things like that. So it's sort of that's what being a mechanical engineer pretty much meant to me.
Nice. And I see you got an arrow towards Carnegie Mellon, which clearly you're a student here now. What was that transition like, and what was sort of the motivation behind it?
So yeah, like I said, Pitt is a great school. The issue with state schools, so like going to college is more about, it's a lot more than just like, you know, here's like the US News ranking, these are the classes I'm going to take. There's like a financial aspect of college too that it's kind of overlooked a lot. I overlooked that when I applied to school. But yeah, so Pitt is the state school, so their financial aid isn't the best. And college gets really expensive and really stressful. So CMU actually provides better financial aid. So it was more like a financial decision that I transferred. But love my I love my experience at Pitt, and I also love my experience at CMU. I think my classes at Pitt were great. They taught me a lot. And CMU has been great in terms of like finding a community that I sort of fit into a little better in terms of like my interests and personally and academically. And the research at CMU in terms of robotics is like sort of next to none. So I've been able to sort of get exposed to a lot more skills and like projects and things like that, and meet a lot more diverse people at CMU. So the experience has been great. Also, people at CMU are like super nice and super welcoming, and it's been great.
That's awesome. So I'm gonna hand it over to Kristen, and she's gonna talk a little bit about your research with you.
All right. Thank you, Saul. Thank you, Sharfin, for telling us all about your experiences middle through high school and then at Pitt, how to Pitt. I'm a Pitt grad for my undergraduate degree. So that sort of brings us to CMU. So tell us, well, I guess you'll tell us soon enough, but you're doing research on a Lego walker, which is a passive walker, which we're going to learn more about very soon. But to kick it off, we're going to start out with another poll. So I'm going to go ahead and get that started here. Right. So our poll question is, what is true about wheels? This is a multiple choice question. Is it A, that they are power efficient and easy to use? B, that they can overcome obstacles easily? C, that they can be used for more purposes than just moving? D, that they have a difficult algorithm problem? Or E, that they do not limit your possible range of motions? All right. Just went ahead and ended the polling, and you all should be able to see those results there. And Sharfin, what is the answer to our polling question?
So the answer is A, except it can also be C now, because someone in my lab actually just published a paper about using wheels for more than just moving. So.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I guess it's a little bit of a trick question. It's A and C. But yeah.
So maybe we'll hear more about C in the future.
Yeah, it's interesting. Engineering happens that fast, I guess.
All right. Well, I'm going to transfer it over to Allison to continue our discussion and to learn more about your research.
Awesome. Okay, so let's just start out with like, Sharfin, can you tell us a little bit about why passive dynamics is useful?
Yeah, so passive dynamics is basically, I'll get into this a little bit later, but passive dynamics is basically a way to create a very efficient little like walker that you guys are all actually going to make today. And you can make it walk, make like little robot walk without any motors or any power or anything. So it's a way to make a very efficient walker. And that's because making a legged walker is pretty difficult. And also, it gets really hard to make a legged walker. So I'm actually under two different labs, basically. I'm under the Robo-Mechanics Lab at CMU, and the Robo-Mechanics Lab focuses on making legged robots and making robots that can go into the world. So you can see two robots here, one with legs and one with wheels. So the one with wheels, its name is Clifford, for like the red dog, and the one on the right, its name is Ellie. But yeah, so passive dynamics is basically a way to create a very efficient legged walker. So the robot on the right is a robot with legs, obviously, and it's more dynamic. It's more capable of navigating difficult terrain. If you think about like a person with legs or like an animal, they all have legs for a reason, and they're all like, capable of like being very dynamic and agile and nimble. The issue with legs is that they are more difficult to implement, and they require a lot more mechanical design. They require complex algorithms to move the legs. They require power, things like that. So that's their biggest disadvantage over wheels. And passive dynamics allows us to sort of maybe make a more energy efficient legged walker, like a legged robot, than if there was just like no passive dynamics involved.
Got it. So passive dynamics is a way to make a robotic walker, right?
Yeah, so it's a way to make a walker that can walk without any motors. But even if you have motors, you can make it a lot more efficient than if you didn't have passive dynamic walking.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So maybe can you tell us a little bit about like the bipedal walkers?
Yeah, so the robot you see on your right is called a quadruped, so that means 4 legs. And that's pretty common. So like if you think about like a dog or like any like animal, most of them have 4 legs. But humans have 2 legs, and humans are probably like one of the best pieces of engineering, I guess. It's kind of weird to think about it, but like humans are like pretty complex in their design. There's been a lot of studies into like how humans are designed, like how we can learn from how like the biology of sort of like how humans move. So yeah, you can see here that these are 3 bipedal walkers, and bipedal just means that they only have 2 legs. So the one on the left is from Boston Dynamics. I don't know if you guys have seen any of their videos, but like this robot can like do parkour, and it can like do kick flips and like jump around and like, I don't know, like jump off walls. It's pretty insane. I probably can't even do some of the things that robot can. The middle robot is from actually a CMU company called Agility Robotics, and it's more for like moving things around, sort of like factory work and things like that. And the robot to your right is called Hermes. It's from MIT, and it was actually initially designed as a rescue robot. So it's like pretty strong and also very, very like precise in movements and moments. So yeah, and these bipedal walkers, you can see that the design is like pretty complex. So like the Boston Dynamics robot has like a bunch of different motors. You can see in the agility robot, like there's like very complex design, a lot of like thought that went into sort of designing these robots, a lot of different motors, sensors, things like that.
Yeah, no, it looks really awesome. And I've definitely seen videos of Boston Dynamic robots, and I think I even saw a commercial of them recently. That's so cool. And why, like, what would you say makes it like difficult to control like the 2 legs versus the 4 legs?
Yeah, so having 2 legs means that you don't have, like, if you want to walk, you only have one point of contact if you want to move, essentially. So you have to maintain stability somehow, right? If you want to walk, and maintain stability is much harder with 2 legs as opposed to 4 legs. So that's why it's a pretty difficult design challenge to sort of have the robot balance its mass, its inertia, make sure it doesn't fall over, but also be able to walk.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and it makes a lot of sense why we want to look, like you said, at the human for like the main source of inspiration. So I think we're gonna head to a poll now that Kristen is going to share with us, and I'm gonna hand it over to her. Thank you for sharing, Sharfin.
Okay. So this one is, this one's actually going to be a poll where we're going to request that our participants respond to via the chat. So where do you think some places would be where you would need legs and not wheels? So where might you need legs instead of wheels? So you can have your bipedal robot versus your robot with wheels. We got Stairs, soccer playing robots, hilly terrain, rocky terrain, different kinds of terrain that might be uneven. There's a lot of holes in the ground, perhaps, or having a robotic driver. Stairs. So Sharfin, are those all good areas? Like, where is the most ideal location to have a bipedal robot?
Yeah, so those are actually all perfect answers. So you guys all had something in common between your answers. Essentially, all your answers involve the robot responding to its environment in some sort of dynamic way. So like, you know, like stairs, a robot might, or like wheels might be able to go upstairs, but like you might have to respond to like different size stairs or like things like that. Or like ice, that's a really good example. So like if you're like trying to like walk over ice or something, a leg is more capable of responding to the environment than wheels. Someone said jumping, that's absolutely true. Like if you want to do like a dynamic event, like jumping or climbing or something like that, or even digging, you would need legs over wheels. Someone said water, and there are robots that can swim, and wheels are not able to swim in water, as far as I know. So like you would need legs there. Someone said driving. I don't think a robot can drive yet, not that I have seen, but I guess if you want a robot to drive, they will have to have legs. Uneven terrain, yeah. So like all these events, like basically anywhere where like a robot might need to sort of respond to its environment or maybe like do some task that it needs agility and control over. So those are all great answers.
Awesome. So now we're going to sort of move on to not human-sized robots, but teeny tiny little robots.
Yeah, so I said earlier that I'm in two different labs. One of them is in the Robo-Mechanics Lab, which is at CMU. It is advised by Dr. Aaron Johnson, and we do a lot of like legged robot controls. So the things you see from like Boston Dynamics and things like that, that's basically what the Robo-Mechanics Lab does. We don't necessarily build that many robots. We do build some robots, but a lot of it is like controlling the robots. The other lab I'm part of is Sarah Bergbrider's lab, and she focuses on making really, really small robots. She didn't make this robot. This robot is absurdly small. It's from Georgia Tech, and you can see that it's smaller than the thickness of a quarter, so that's crazy. She makes robots that are really small, and like she makes like, for example, like one of her projects is making a jumping like shrimp robot, which is really cool. And she made like a walker that was like the size of like this eraser. So it was like a little like cockroach that could walk, but it was like this size. So yeah, small robots are like a pretty interesting and like new field because it uses like a lot of like high tech things. So like a lot of it isn't necessarily like motors or things like that. Like you can see here that like you can't really fit a motor into that size at all, at least not for like one that is easily accessible. So a lot of like the things that she works on is like using like electric fields to control movements and things like that. So yeah, smaller robots are the other field or the other sort of aspect of the project I'm working on, and it's a pretty new and like cool field.
Awesome. That's so neat.
It looks like, Sharfin, there's a question in the chat. Do you know what that tiny robot does?
Yeah, so that tiny robot just moves around, and you can actually control its path. So I think the way it works is they control like a magnetic field that excites the system. So it's able to sort of like vibrate, and you're able to, by controlling the magnetic field, you're able to control the direction of the robot. So yeah, it's pretty cute. I wish I put a video in. It's kind of cool how it moves around. They have to use a microscope to look at it, which is kind of crazy that you can have a robot that small that you need a microscope. Yeah, it's similar to a hex bug. So I don't know if you guys seen like those little vibrating like bug toys, but it's similar to that.
That's really neat. Especially that you need a microscope to really see it move. It's so tiny. So now we're going to move on to another poll in which we wanted to ask you all, what is the difference between walking and running? So is it that A, running uses both legs at all times, B, running requires more energy, or C, running has a period of flight?
Also, it looks like we have another question on the chat about what the end goal of the nano robots are. Like, is the end goal nano robots or is it something different?
That's a really interesting question. I don't know if I'm necessarily qualified to answer that question, but a lot of the work being done in small robots is sort of just to, like, see that it can be done, and maybe apply that later on to a different field. So at least the projects that like Dr. Bergreiter is working on, not all of them have like a direct application to a field necessarily, like the Robo-Mechanics Lab, like Dr. Johnson's lab does. But it's sort of just like showing that this technology exists and that it can be like used in maybe a different situation by someone else. So remove a tumor cell by cell. That would be awesome if that's possible, but yeah.
So potentially in the future. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and end our polling now and share the results. So Sharfin, what is the difference between walking and running?
Yeah, so the main difference is that running has a period of flight. So when you run, your feet leave the air at one point. So like your feet are not, you don't have a foot on the ground at all points. And that's the biggest difference. Running sometimes requires more energy, but that's not necessarily true. People have made like really fast running walkers that are very energy efficient. And that's just through understanding the gait dynamics of walking. So the main difference is that running has a period of flight where both your feet leave the air. And while walking, you have one foot at the ground at all times.
All right. So at this point in time, I'm going to transfer it over to Dr. Webster Wood, and we're going to learn a little bit more about your small robot research.
Thanks, Kristen. Yeah, so this is a great slide to start this with, Sharfin. You started this with a title slide that said Lego Walker. Can you explain a little bit about what you mean by Lego Walker here?
Yeah. So Lego Walker essentially just means that we are trying to make a bipedal walker that is controlled with legs, obviously. So a bipedal walker that is the size of a Lego robot. We chose a Lego robot just because that size is like something that people are very familiar with. So like if you say it's like, oh, we made a robot the size of a Lego figure, people would have like an idea of like how big that is. So yeah, we're basically just trying to make a really small bipedal walker. So yeah, that's what we're trying to accomplish basically.
Awesome. And what sort of techniques are you using to kind of get these to walk?
Yeah, so I mentioned passive dynamics, which I'll go into a little bit later. But we're integrating passive dynamics because you can see by like, I'm sure most of you guys have played with Legos and things like that. The Legos are very small. They're not as small as that robot we saw earlier, but they're pretty small compared to the like bipedal robots that I showed earlier. So yeah, there's not a lot of space for like sensors or motors or things like that. So we're integrating passive dynamics and different ways of like actuation to sort of make these walkers.
Awesome. And can you explain passive dynamic walking a little bit more?
Yeah, so passive dynamic walking, I think there's a slide about this later where we like actually look at a passive dynamic walker. So that'll probably be a lot like pretty helpful. But
okay, well we can continue through the slides too. You know.
Okay, yeah. So yeah. Oh yeah, it's right here. All right, that makes sense. So yeah, this is a video. I don't think it's playing. All right, I'm gonna click the YouTube link and I'm just gonna show it on that. Can you guys see the video?
So not yet. I think you have to stop sharing and then reshare with the YouTube video.
Mhm.
All right.
There
can
it
I see
is.
All right. So this is what a passive dynamic walker looks like, and you can see it walk down a plane here. So you can see that the robot has no motors, it has no like actuators, no batteries, it's just 2 legs and some motor, like some like axles and things like that. So that's what it looks like walking down a ramp. And you guys are actually going to make your very own version of this at home, just a lot smaller. So yeah, here's it walking down a natural slope. So you can notice that like here, the robot is on a slight incline. So that's how it's able to sort of gain power. And you can also notice that like the design of it is very specific. Like the feet are curved and there's like mass up here. So we'll go into that design a little bit more, but that's sort of what passive dynamic walkers look like. So yeah, let me just find a slide here. There we go. Cool. All right. I think you're muted, Dr. Webster.
I was. Excellent. Yes, I was just going to ask, what do you need to be able to do this passive dynamic walking? And I think I'm going to hand it back over to Allison from here as well.
Yeah. So passive dynamic walking, essentially to walk in general, you need a few different things. And this is like a very simplified like way to describe walking. But essentially you sort of need clearance for your leg swing. So that's the leg you swing forward. So if you think about how you guys walk, like how humans walk, you sort of like use your knee to pick it up and you're able to swing it forward. So you need clearance for your swing leg. You also need a way to sort of gain forward momentum for your swing leg. So you need a way to swing it forward. And we use our muscles to do that. And you also need a way to sort of like move your body forward as well, not just your legs. And you also need stability on your stance leg. So when you pick up your leg, you need to be able to not fall over. So that's an important part of walking. And the aspects of passive dynamic walking that are able to sort of help with this are a few different factors. So like the feet are curved in a very specific way. So the feet are curved in such that like you're able to wobble. So if you think back to the video we just saw, the robot was wobbling in like the front plane. So it was like wobbling like side to side, right? And it was also like moving forward and backwards like this. So that wobble allows you to basically gain clearance for your leg. So like if you see the picture on your top left there, that robot, if you give it a wobble, it sort of tips on one leg and then one leg is basically off the ground at that point. And I mentioned earlier that the robot is on a slope, right? So what happens like when you have like, let's say like this pencil and it's like inclined, right? And then you let it go, it wants to drop forward. So once you gain like clearance from your leg, which is like from the curvature, that leg is able to like sort of swing forward. And then like that leg comes down, the robot continues to wobble, and sort of it repeats that process. And that's essentially how you get the result that you saw earlier from that video.
So it needs motion. It needs the ability to move in both planes, the frontal and the plane, like perpendicular to that. And then you mentioned it also needs clearance with the incline to be able to move the legs, right?
Yep.
Okay, that's really awesome. And then I saw that you also have an image here about the gait cycle. Are you trying to like show that both of those two images on top map to the gait cycle of a human?
Yeah, so the gait cycle it's a little different from a passive dynamic walker, but it's pretty similar. So at one point, like you have only 1 foot in contact and you have 2 foot in contact. So that's called the stance and swing phase. So like the swing phase is when your leg is swinging forward, and the stance phase is when your leg is coming down and you come in contact. So it's similar to a human. The difference is that with a passive dynamic walker, you don't get push off necessarily. So push off like means that like you're basically just like using your muscles to sort of push off and sort of gain that forward momentum. So that was one of the challenges that we had because we didn't want our Lego walker to only walk on planes. We wanted to walk on flat ground. So we incorporated passive dynamic walking, but the real challenge for my work was sort of figuring out how to eliminate the plane or like the inclined plane. So we want to eliminate that angle and make it 0 and sort of gain that push off.
Yeah. Sorry.
I know, go ahead.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. That's so you were trying to sort of show like remove the need for the plane and you go another method about that, so you could, like you just said, go on any surface.
Yeah. So yeah, we're basically sort of combining like the way a human walks, or like those bipedal walkers walk, and also a bipedal walker. So like the passive dynamic walker allowed us to do a few things. It allowed us to eliminate the need for a knee, essentially. So there's no need for a knee, which adds to the mechanical design, which would make it complex. Because remember, like we only have 4 centimeters to work with, which is not a lot of space. So yeah, we got rid of the knees, and also the passive dynamic walking allowed us to minimize the number of motors we need. And then like understanding how the way humans walk is how we were able to sort of be able to like gain forward momentum and eliminate the slope. So it's sort of just like a compromise between the two things.
Got it. And 4 centimeters because that's the size of the Lego, right?
Yeah. So a Lego figure is 4 centimeters tall in total. Okay,
awesome. Yeah, no, you just want to move on and show us a little bit about like what you guys did for that solution. That would be awesome.
Yep. So, all right, I don't think this is gonna play. It's kind of weird. I have a video of it on my computer actually. So
okay, that sounds good.
Let me just pull that up. Okay, so here we go.
Yep, right, we see it.
Yep, awesome. So this is the robot that I developed over the course of like a year and a half. So you can see walking here by itself, and this is just on my desk. It's not on an incline, and it's able to take steps and walk stably.
So what did you do a little bit differently here in order to do this? We see that there's like some electrical components here, right?
Yeah. Passive dynamic walking, like I said, works on an incline. So that incline is sort of like a really important part of how it's able to work without motors. But like I said, we want to be on a flat surface, so we have to use motors. So you can see that these motors sort of like push the leg in and out. So these motors are pushing the leg up and down, and it's sort of giving us that push off that we need. So that's where all the electrical components you see here. So like the blue thing there is the battery, and then like the wires are for the circuit board, which controls the motors here, which are like the black rectangles you see here. And those motors push the leg in and out.
So do we have one motor per each leg to move each respectively?
Yep. So there is one motor for each leg. So each leg has one motor, which is actually pretty good in terms of efficiency for actuation methods. So
awesome. And do you think maybe you can share a little bit about what other type of knowledge you might need to make these robots?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go back to the PowerPoint. Actually, I'll keep the video playing in case anyone wants to keep watching it. But yeah, so like you can see here that there's like a lot of different aspects. So like for one, you need to design the mechanical aspect of it. So like I built this robot from scratch. I designed it not from scratch totally. I read off like a lot of papers and a lot of work that other people are doing, which is a big part of research. And I sort of used that to inspire the mechanical design. And there's a lot of iteration and a lot of failure. You guys are going to experience that a little bit today. Like your passive dynamic walkers might not work great the first time, and that's perfectly okay, because mine didn't either. And there's a lot of trial and error. So like you need to understand the mechanical design of it. You need to understand like sort of the physics behind it. But you also need to be able to control your robot. So like you can see like all the wires and stuff. So we need to like program the robot to sort of move the legs in and out. And you can do that using information from the robot. So like if you see the wires that go up all the way to the top to sort of that little like torso there, those are wires going to inertial measurement unit. And that basically is able to give us readings of where the robot is. So like it's able to give us like the angle of the robot, and we're able to control the legs based off of that. So that involves a little bit of coding. And we also need to like use electrical stuff, so like, you know, all the wires and stuff. So that was a little bit of like circuit design, things like that, that were involved. So robotics is a super diverse field, and there's a lot of different aspects of robotics beyond just like building stuff. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, for sure. And thank you for sharing. And it's true, like failure is part of like the learning process. Nothing worth doing is easy or comes easily all the time. So yeah, a lot of truth in that.
Can you guys see my screen again?
We still see the YouTube video.
Oh, okay.
I think you might have to reshare the PowerPoint. There you go.
Sharfin, looks like we had a question in the chat. How did you actually fabricate the body of the robot?
So yeah, the body of the robot is all 3D printed. So yeah, I think pretty much everything is 3D printed. There's a metal shaft, like an axle, that you can see. It's kind of hard to see in the picture here, but there's a metal shaft that like I did a little bit of manual machining with, like going on like a mill and things like that. But pretty much everything's 3D printed.
Cool.
Awesome. So let's maybe we can go into some of the key features.
Yep. So yeah, I went over this a little bit, but yeah, so this is the 3D model of the robot, and basically to make the mechanical design of it, I had to sort of read a lot of papers about passive dynamic walking. So like, oops. The slide you see here, these images on the top, those like what they're called dynamic models, that was from a paper I probably read like 20 times at this point. I read a bunch of other papers to sort of understand like the design of passive dynamic walking. So yeah, some of the key features are the curved feet. So you saw in the video the passive dynamic walker that was not powered. The feet were curved in the 2 planes. So the 2 planes were the frontal and sagittal plane. So they're curved in like sort of 3 dimensions, and they're curved in such a way that like the robot is able to maintain balance and is able to like roll and wobble side to side and backward and forth. Also, an important part of the robot is sort of the offset center mass and center pressure. So your center pressure is where you make contact with the ground. So for humans, like your center pressure is basically like wherever your feet are in contact with the ground. So it's sort of like an area. The issue with like having a rolling thing, if you think about like a ball, the ball is really only in contact with like 1 point with the ground. So the center pressure is very small. And one of the principles of like keeping stability in a bipedal walker is that your center mass can't be farther forward or like super far forward away from your center pressure. But one of the principles of walking is that you need to have your center pressure above your center mass to be able to walk. So it was sort of like a balancing act. And I had to like fiddle around with this distance a lot and like sort of do a little bit of like math to figure that out. But this offset in center mass and center pressure basically lets us like sort of tilt forward. So I'm actually gonna go back to the video for a second here. I think it was playing for some reason. All right. Oh, okay. So I guess it is able to work.
There you go. Yeah.
Well, messed up, but yeah. So you can see that the robot's like essentially like tilting forward, and that is because of the offset between center mass and center pressure. So essentially, like the robot's like leaning forward at all points, and because it's leaning forward, the leg, once you like gain clearance, the leg wants to swing forward. So that was a big part of the robot design. So basically, overall, the curved feet allowed us to sort of create that wobble that I was talking about earlier from passive dynamics. And that wobble was really important because it allowed us to sort of gain clearance, right? By wobbling, we lifted up off the ground. We were able to sort of like get one leg off the ground. And this offset between center mass and center pressure was able to like have the robot tilt forward so that when you pick up your leg and you gain that clearance, the leg wants to swing forward because it's like sort of tilted like this and it wants to swing like that.
So the offset allowed it to swing forward between the offset between the center of pressure and the center of mass.
Yep.
Okay. Maybe can you define a little bit the center of pressure for us?
Yeah. So the center of pressure is basically wherever it's in contact with the ground. So like, let's go back to the video here. The center of pressure is wherever the leg is in contact with the ground. So right now, the area that the leg, like the foot makes with the mat there, that is the center of pressure because it's only in contact with one point. And
So
the
it
center of
uses, sorry, so it uses the surface area of the curved feet.
yeah, so wherever the curved feet are in contact with the ground.
Got it. Okay. And then you were, I cut you off. I think you were talking about the center of mass.
Okay, yeah. So the center of mass is basically like it's basically like wherever the mass is concentrated. There's like a technical definition of it, but the mass can be concentrated at a single point, and that is usually like a little forward here. So I don't know if you guys can see my cursor, but it's like
Yeah, we
usually
see
like,
it.
that the center mass is. So that center mass is like forward relative to the center pressure, and that allows the leg to sort of swing forward and gain forward momentum.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's clear. Thank you. And then I think I think you also wanted to give an update on like where you guys are now with the design.
Oh yeah. So like I said, we wanted to make a Lego walker, and the robot that I showed earlier was the robot I developed, and that was not the size of a Lego walker. It was exactly 13 times bigger, and that was essentially just like a prototyping method. So we wanted to test out different ways to sort of move the legs in and out, and my idea was leg extension, and so that was just testing that idea at a bigger scale. So now that we know it works, we want to sort of scale it down, and we're sort of taking baby steps. So we're not going from like 13x to 1x, we're going to 5x. So you can see here, this is a video of a 5x walker, and it's wobbling back and forth, and it took a few steps. So that's where we're at currently right now.
That's really adorable. It's like,
Mhm.
And do you think you can tell us a little bit about what applications that this smaller Lego walker would have?
Yeah, so this is one of the things I was talking about earlier, where like the application isn't necessarily like direct with like a lot of robotics. So like, I don't think you'll be seeing these like in the forest at any point or anything like that. But it's sort of unique in that like no one has made a bipedal walker that is this small and untethered. So it's sort of proving the concept of that and being able to show that this is possible. And hopefully maybe later on in our lab or like someone else's lab or like an industry or something like that, someone is able to use that knowledge and use our work to sort of build off that and maybe actually make an application of it.
Yeah, that's completely true. You're pushing the bounds of science, and then that helps like just, sort of bring forward all of science because everybody has like access to that knowledge now.
Yep.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to transfer it over to Saul so that we can start going over the activity.
Yeah, so the activities, this is a fun one. So let's get all the things that you're gonna need. So right now you need a pencil, which you should have in your kit. It should look, let's see, do I have an extra pencil? Well, here's the pencil with everything on it. So you need a pencil, you need the 4 binder clips that should have come in the mail to you. 2 of them are gonna be pretty small and 2 of them are gonna be a little bit bigger. And then you need some sort of ramp on like what we're gonna call a high friction surface. So like if you have a book that has sort of like a textured cover, that might work. Or if you have like a clipboard, that might work. Or maybe like a notepad or something. But if it's got like a really glossy surface, like here's a nice like book, right? But it's very smooth, it doesn't work so well. So you need something that's got like a high friction surface. And optionally, you're going to want some tape and some weights to attach to the end, because it turns out if you make it a little bit heavier on the pencil, it works a little bit better. So take this time to gather these materials. Yeah.
So, and also for your high friction surface, you'll see in the video, we used a back of a mouse pad. So that could potentially work well for you as well as you test out this activity. And then for the tape, we use electrical tape. So if you are going to use electrical tape, you will need scissors for this. But you can probably also use like Scotch tape depending on the type of weight that you could potentially be using. And the weights that we used for this were dimes. So any change that you have laying around the house might work well, or like small objects that would fit easily on the end of a pencil.
One thing, if you're gonna add weights, just make sure you add the same weight on both sides. So it's important to have 2 of the same weights if you are gonna add those.
Yeah. And in terms of the tape, I was using blue tape with some success. So if you don't have electrical tape, or you have Scotch tape or blue tape, like Christian said, that will work. And another example of a weight that you could use, you know, I'm always building stuff. So I've got these little, they're called nuts, right? These little like things that you attach to the end of screws. And so these work really well because they're all like uniform. So if you have any of those lying around by any chance, that works really well. But so it doesn't have to be change, just things that are uniform in weight, and then you can have multiple of them. So you can make sure you put even amounts on either side of the pencil.
Exactly. We do have examples of this being done elsewhere as well, but the materials used were slightly different. They used a longer wooden dowel. So we're going to show you an example of that. And of course, it's walking successfully. So they're not showing you the steps that this person took to ensure that they had the right length wooden dowel, that their walker was weighted properly, that their ramp was at the correct height. So they're just sort of showing you the end result, in which case their walker ends up walking smoothly. So we're just going to take a look at this video so that you can sort of get a good idea as to how this works. And again, this was from instructables.com.
So one thing to note, they're using the binder clips as sort of an additional weight here. So it's, yeah, so those aren't like those aren't part of the 4 that are included. Just something to note.
So in a perfect world, this is how your walker would walk. But our task today is to try to figure out what works for the materials that we have. So some things to sort of keep in mind while we do this. You want to make sure that your binder clips can rotate a good amount. You want to make sure that your ramp isn't super steep. If you think back to, I think it was the first thing that Sharfin showed, it was only a very slight incline that the ramp walker was walking on initially. So the ramp that they had was about 5 degrees. So if you have your ramp too high, your walker will probably fall over, but if it's not high enough, it won't go anywhere. So you'll need to sort of test out different heights. And yeah, you might need to add some inertia to the ends of the pencil. So you might need to add some weight to the ends of the pencil and like maybe give it a tap as well to get it to walk. And it's okay if you're not able to get it to work. So now, I think that's it. Sharfin, did you have anything else to note before we go into our 5-minute break?
Yeah, so I just want to say that like this requires a lot of like testing and fiddling. You can see like even in the video, they like cut the video, so you can see like they probably had some troubles too. And this is actually like, this is one of the projects that we get in our CMU Intro to Robotics class. And like, even the kids at CMU struggle with it, and they had to fiddle around with it too. So a lot of it is going to be a lot of like trial and error. And yeah, I just want to emphasize that like, if you don't get your thing to walk, and if your thing falls over, try different things, try to figure out why it's not like falling over, what things you can change. And you're sort of like experiencing what I experienced when I was building my walker. I had to sort of see like, okay, didn't work the way I wanted it to. Why isn't it working the way I wanted to? And you have to sort of like figure out how to change things to sort of adjust for that. So
Great. Yeah, exactly. And this is your own scientific process today. And each person is going to have a slightly different setup from someone else's setup. And we're going to come back at the end and talk about that. So if you want to put the 5-minute break screen up, I will sort of put 5 minutes on our clock here. Right now, I have it as 11:21 on my clock. So if you want to take 5 minutes, do whatever you need to do, get up, stretch, get your materials ready. And when we come back at 11:26, we will head off into our breakout rooms. All right, well, welcome back, everybody. I hope that you had some time to get your walker to at least take a couple of steps, if not going down the whole ramp thus far. So we want to hear how it went. So if you want to share your results, you can tell us in the chat. You're welcome to share your video and talk about it. And then, yeah, we can learn more about, what worked, what didn't. If anybody would like to share, please go ahead and raise your hand. We have in the chat. Peter says that mine took a few steps. Juliet says pretty good. It was wobbling. Allison said mine took baby steps. Ronnie said that they had to shave off a lot of wood. And it looks like, Allison, you have your hand raised. Would you like to share?
Sure. I know my group was talking about like when if you hit it more vigorously or harder, then it will take more steps, and it's like if one moves forward, then it's causing the other one to move, and then it eventually stops because it's losing its energy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually an interesting point. Sorry. Yeah, so like one of the things about passive dynamics is like friction exists and like impact exists. So like that's why the thing stopped walking after a while. But like ideally, if there's no like friction or impact or anything like that, your walker would keep going forever. But that's why it stops, because like friction and like there's damping and things. So.
All right. Anybody else want to share? So in the meantime, it also looks like we have a question here. Can a passive walker walk on a treadmill?
I don't know if I have an answer to that. That's kind of interesting. I don't. My first reaction is probably not. But maybe. I don't think I've ever seen anyone try that. So.
Yeah. So maybe if you had enough weight on it and you had your treadmill at a little bit of an incline, it might be able to walk, but you probably have to be going slowly, I would think, in order for this particular walker to walk without falling over.
Yeah, I think it's all about like matching the timing between like the swinging legs and like the wobble, the treadmill moving. So there's a lot of different variables that you try to figure out, but it's probably possible.
Alright. So Juliet in our chat said that mine was a bit lopsided, so I added weights on one side. So yeah, we have our last poll here. And it's actually name one thing that didn't go as expected while building your walker. So please feel free to share in the chat, or if you would like to share video, just go ahead and raise your hand. So the baby steps didn't go as expected. It didn't walk, or didn't go the whole way, or it just fell. Someone thought it would take bigger steps. Yeah. Another comment, I did not expect how much you would have to prepare it, but also how little materials were needed. So it's neat that you can sort of just make, you know, 4 binder clips and a pencil walk down a ramp. But again, everybody has a different setup in their own home. So if you would want to make your walker walk, what's one thing that you found that was helpful? So the opposite of this question. Name one thing, I guess, that did go as expected when you were building this. Or you could indicate one thing that you found to be helpful.
Like if you guys were like trying to have someone else do it, like what would you like advise someone else? Like give like someone a tip when they were building their own walker. Someone said the traction surface was very helpful.
So someone said the traction surface was very helpful. So what were some of the high friction surfaces that you did use? Someone also said I used scissors to shave the paint off of the pencil. You could probably also use even like sandpaper. So someone used the mouse pad.
I like Micah's comment that nothing really worked like I expected it to, because that kind of sums up engineering. So you guys all experienced your own little piece of engineering today.
And you know, I think everybody even saw in the demo video as well, not the one shared with the large group, but the one shared with our materials and our supplies and our individual breakout rooms. Even there, our walker only did 5 or 6 steps at once. So in that case, we still needed to add in some more changes to really make it work and to make it be successful. So on that, does anybody have any final thoughts, questions, or comments about this session? right. Well, I guess that brings us to our final slide. So we just want to say thank you for joining us today. Special thanks to our presenter, Sharfin, for taking the time out to tell us about his research, to help us plan this activity that's related to his research, and to explain more about how a passive walker actually comes to walk. So yeah, we do have one more session this fall, and then we'll resume again in the springtime in March. But yeah, so thanks, Sharfin, for presenting today, and thank you for all of our mentors for joining us. And thanks to our coordination team members as well for helping plan this event. And we'll see you all next time.